how-to video. I'll be sharing budget tips for clam chowder. I will share some tips on how to get a really nice creamy and velvety chowder. If you don't have all the ingredients here, that's okay. I am just showing you what I have in my refrigerator and pantry. There are many different ways that you can make this chowder. So don't let that stop you. You'll get a lot of great tips. First, we're going to prep our fresh ingredients, our celery, potato, onions, garlic, and herbs. You want to make sure that your garlic is nice and diced. I'm only using half an onion. A budget tip is if you want to stretch those pennies, then you can find small ways. Therefore, I'm only using a half an onion. Sometimes you can buy really large onions and a half an onion will be sufficient. Sometimes they're small and you might need to use the entire onion. Really depends on the size you're working with. I do not like big chunks, neither does my daughter. The finer or smaller I can cook certain ingredients, such as garlic or onion, celery, the easier it is for her to eat. I don't want an abundance of celery, so I'm just using 2 celery stalks. Now when it comes to potatoes, there is a lot of variety. You have red potatoes, gold potatoes, russet potatoes. I prefer a yellow gold potato because it's a semi-waxy and it holds up really well in the soup. I will get more chunks instead of potatoes that dissolve like a russet potato does. When it comes to cutting your potatoes, there really is no wrong way. My best advice is to make sure that the potatoes are at least the same size, so when they cook evenly. One budget tip that I highly recommend is fresh herbs. It will elevate almost every dish that you make. Parsley is an inexpensive herb. It's less than $1. You can use it in a lot of dishes. It's very versatile. I enjoy using fresh thyme, but it is more expensive. But I only had a little bit left, so I will also use dried when I don't have a lot. For storage purposes, I'll take my other half onion and wrap it in a wet paper towel and put it in a Ziploc bag. That will make it less smelly in my refrigerator. Clams. You can get fresh clams or canned clams. I prefer fresh clams if I can find them, but it's not always easy finding fresh clams that are budget friendly. So these are widely available. I'm using a combination of smoked clams and diced clams. I actually preferred the smoked clams, not because they're smoked, but because they were whole clams. And I got a lot more volume with those 2 cans than the diced clams. You'll see when I display both.
What are you making?
Clam chowder. When you render bacon grease, you want to start in a cold pan and let the heat rise. I do this on a medium temperature, and I prefer to leave the bacon whole. That way, if I dice them up, I have more of a chance of maybe losing some bacon bits and they'll get a little fried or burnt. And I don't want that in a clam chowder. I'm going to use that bacon grease for my onions and celery. You're not really required to let the onions and celery saute for too long before you add the potatoes. You can add the potatoes a couple minutes after the celery and onions started to saute. I went ahead and added my garlic, pepper, and salt and a bay leaf a few minutes after the potatoes had been sauteing. Together you want to saute for about 10 minutes. To add some extra flavor, I'm using some wine, Worcestershire sauce, not a lot of wine, about 1/4 cup. And because I don't have chicken stock, I am actually using my chicken base, which is basically a bouillon. I would prefer to use a seafood or chicken stock if I had it. In goes the wine, and another alternative is if you don't have wine, you could use dry vermouth. I would only use maybe a tablespoon of dry vermouth. Next, I'm doing my chicken base, but this isn't required if you're going to be using chicken stocks or maybe a seafood stock if you have it. I added all these different ingredients about 2 minutes in between each process, and I let it saute, and then I added the next layer. I'm adding water. Like I said, I'm not using chicken stock. If you have that, go ahead and use it. I'm also using juice of clams. However, I forgot to record that, so you're not going to see it. You're going to cook your broth until the potatoes are done. It takes about 30 minutes. Once the potatoes are done, you can add your dairy. I prefer to use either a cream, whipping cream, or a whole milk. That way you're not going to get clotting. It makes it a little bit more smooth process. I'm choosing to use cornstarch. I prefer to use the cornstarch at this stage and save my flour towards the end of my soup. This way I can determine my thickness and how thick I really want to go. I'm using about 4 tablespoons of cornstarch. That froth is just from the whipping cream when I was whipping it with the whisk. You're going to let this simmer on a medium-low for about 20 minutes. And then you're going to make sure and remove that bay leaf. Next, you're going to add your clams. And try not to be as messy as I was. You're going to let this simmer for about 10 minutes on a medium-low temperature. Now, I prefer the soup to be a little bit more thicker, so I am going to be adding a flour roux, and I am doing this separately. you'll notice that I cook my flour roux in a separate bowl, and that's how I prefer it. I'm doing about 4 tablespoons of butter with 5 tablespoons of flour. You'll get the butter melted, and then you will put in your flour and whisk it, and then you'll let the flour cook for about a minute or 2. Yeah, I burnt it, but you can just remove it off the heat, turn down your heat, and it'll be fine. Once you've let the butter and flour cook for about 2 minutes to get some of that rawness out, you'll go ahead and add 2 cups of milk. But you're going to add it slowly, and you're going to whisk. And if you rather use whipping cream, you can certainly do that. It will make it a little bit more thicker instead of using your milk.
I made this soup myself. Steaming here. It's steaming hard, right?
Getting there. How's the texture?
Well, it's like a soup. It's not too liquidy. It's easy to stir.
Do you want it chunkier, or is that a good texture?
That's a good texture to
I
me.
like it too. After you've added the flour, just let it simmer on a medium-low for about 10-15 minutes, making sure to stir because it will get a film. I like to add a little bit of smoked paprika, pepper, and a little bit extra salt if needed, along with some fresh parsley. And there you go. Enjoy!